Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to Where the Road Rises. With me, your host, Eileen Carlin Walsh. Together with our expert guests, we seek solutions to the legal, financial, emotional, and medical challenges our seniors and their caregivers face. Today, we tackle hearing loss, which affects 31 million Americans. 2/3 of us over 75 have hearing loss, yet only about 15% wear hearing aids. According to the National Council on Aging, loss of hearing is a serious life issue, a medical condition associated with physical, emotional, mental, and social well-being. Depression, anxiety, instability, paranoia, withdrawal, isolation, poor health, and poor self-esteem have all been linked to uncorrected hearing loss. Here to help us understand the effect of hearing loss on our whole body, as well as what to do if we suspect it, is Doctor of Audiology, Lisa Gumina. I heard Lisa speak at an Ashley and Companion Home Care Conference on aging, and I was transfixed. Everything she said about hearing loss described my elderly father and my husband to a T. I knew we had to have her on the show. So thank you, Lisa, for agreeing to share your knowledge with us today, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's terrific to have you talk about this really important subject to our seniors. So why don't we just get started with a little about you?
Okay.
Your background, your journey, how you arrived at the field of audiology.
Very interesting. I never knew I wanted to be an audiologist when I first started out. I actually grew up going to the jazz clubs with my father since I've been about 6 or 7 years old, and I play saxophone, so I wanted to be a professional musician for a long time. And of course, I was encouraged to look into other avenues, so I was able to find a field where I could put my music and work with hard of hearing people. I started to become a deaf educator, and I was able to incorporate the love of music with using American Sign Language, and I became interested through working with hearing impaired through sign language, actually. So I was going to become a deaf educator, and I play in a band all through my college career. Even now, I still perform professionally. And I met a deaf drummer in college, and it was a battle of the bands. It was a rock performance in college. I met a deaf drummer who actually put on a hearing aid to hear the bass drum so he could actually perform with his group. And I was like caught in this stare, and he fascinated me with this hearing instrument he had put on. And it just really caught my attention. So afterwards, all through sign, I was able to communicate with him and ask him more about the device he was wearing and how that made a significant impact in his life. And that's how I learned about audiology and what audiology was. And I knew right then and there, this is perfect for me. So that's kind of my inside journey through the back door of how I became an audiologist.
And what is audiology?
Audiology is a professional group of people who understand the science behind hearing and our balance system, because our ability to hear and our ability to have good balance really tie hand in hand. We can learn a lot about our balance system through our hearing. And so that's very, very important to understand. So audiology is a true understanding of the science that is behind hearing and our balance system.
And Lisa, you say we hear with our brain, not our ears. What do you mean by that?
What do I mean by that? That is fascinating to me. Our ears simply channel sound. That's what our ears do. It doesn't know the difference between music that we hear. It doesn't know the difference between speech. It doesn't have meaning at the ear level until we get it to the brainstem. So we have two funnels. Our ears simply pick up the information, and then it's transformed to our brainstem where we're able to process and understand the things around us.
So that's where all our memories and language and interpretation, how we string everything together is in our brain, not our ear.
Correct.
So if we're not hearing correctly, our whole ability to communicate
Absolutely.
is affected.
Yep.
And what about, since we have so many seniors and we focus on seniors in this program, there is a natural, even without dementia, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, there's a natural cognitive loss as we age. How is that affected by hearing, or how does hearing loss affect our cognition then?
So our ability to understand or process what we hear and our ability to hear are two separate things. So as we get older and as we age, our ability to make sense of the things we hear start to deteriorate. And so when we have hearing loss, especially hearing loss that's not diagnosed or known but not treated, that becomes a more complex area of understanding how cognition, understanding, and how hearing can tie into play. So as we all get older and wiser, we are all going to lose a little bit of our hearing. It tends to be a natural process that we see. But as we get older and our ability to process the things around us, make sense of the things we hear, can trifold, it can exponentiate the process as we get older.
And what are some of the consequences, the effects of the hearing loss as it worsens?
Yeah, we see a lot of effects. Biggest one being social isolation. We see a lot of depression. We see a lot of lack of inability or lack of self-esteem just really declines in an individual. They're not wanting to, go to an activity or go to a bingo or go to dinner with their family, because they know when they go to those situations, especially outside of a nice quiet environment like we have here, if we take this conversation and go to Egg Harbor or go to a restaurant, we're going to have a lot harder time understanding each other, because you put a lot of more complicated situation into the picture.
So these might be some of the signs our caregivers and family members can look for, even if we don't notice the hearing loss itself. We might notice some of the symptoms that maybe it is time to get the hearing checked.
Yeah, oftentimes we see seniors withdraw from things or not want to participate in activities or just not want to do things, not be as active as they may have been in their younger years.
And certainly what I've noticed with my father is the frustration that he feels, almost an anger at not being able to hear, and a little bit of resentment of conversation going on around. So it does have a profound effect. And the news gets a little worse before it gets better, because certain medical conditions can also exacerbate hearing loss. Talk to us a little bit about those. Diabetes, correct?
Yeah, with diabetes, we've learned over the years through a lot of research and just working with individuals who have diabetes, there's oftentimes undiagnosed hearing loss. And in fact, now hearing loss is noted as a lesser complication to diabetes, especially if left untreated. It can definitely fluctuate. We can see changes in a person's hearing ability on a regular basis. Their hearing can change. It can be better in the morning, worse in the evening, and as their blood sugar is variable, their hearing can be variable. So it's very, very important to have your hearing checked, especially if you have any form of diabetes.
And heart cardiovascular health also. Now help us understand, do these medical conditions contribute to the hearing loss, or does the hearing loss contribute to them? How are they related?
They're related in a lot of ways. Some of the medications that we take to treat some of our cardiovascular and arthritic conditions have known, to contribute to hearing loss. Sometimes as well as going through, otoxic medication treatments like a chemotherapy or any other type of invasive treatments. There's been a known effect on the hearing system where hearing loss can be left after that occurrence.
Good gracious, and I think that's probably a surprise for most of us who don't realize that we have to keep watching the hearing and make sure that it's diagnosed and treated, because if we have some of these other diseases, we're probably going to be thinking that is frivolous compared, but it's an essential part of the medical treatment. And there's also a connection, Lisa, between dementia and hearing loss. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, as you started out earlier defining the National Council on Aging definition of untreated hearing loss, we can interchange that definition with dementia. So hearing loss and dementia in itself, it's a whole category that untreated hearing loss should be very, very high on the spectrum when looking into those diagnoses.
And the evaluation of hearing then for our elder population has to be key, number one, right up there with checking all the other vitals.
Very important. Just as we go to get our blood checked for high blood pressure, we're not afraid to do that, or get our, prick our finger for blood sugar tests. We should have our hearing evaluated at least annually. Every 18 months is protocol for a diabetic patient. You can't. 12 to 18 months is ideal, but we want to see hearing be such an important part as just a general physical, getting your blood pressure checked, getting your eyes checked, getting your blood sugar checked, things like that. We want hearing to be a very, very important part of that picture.
Yes, Lisa, because I think as a society, we check our children's hearing. We have an idea that our elders need their hearing checked, but we really don't think we need to be bothering in those decades in between, but it sounds like we do.
Yes.
It sounds like we do.
Yes.
So tell us about your company, Finer Hearing LLC. What do you do?
I'm actually a mobile audiologist, so currently I bring services to communities, to seniors, to individuals, to their home, to their environments where they hear the most. I'm able to bring all audiology healthcare services right to them. So I've started that practice with my base of 22 years of patients needing to have me come and see them. That's how I started this concept of a business. And I like it because I can tie my music in more, where I'm talking a lot more about hearing conservation to young musicians. I'm going to schools lecturing about hearing conservation. So kind of like that very important piece that I grew up with in my life, I'm able to put it in my field in many ways. So, and I'm able to do that more with my own practice.
Well, that's amazing, because one of the things I was thinking about today was, we focus on the sandwich generation, so a lot of our caregivers are not only taking care of elderly parents, but they still have dependent or adult children living at home. And it occurs to me that maybe we could get a bit of advice for what to do with our children, our teens listening to the very loud music. The earphones, are they at a little bit of increased danger, and what should we be telling them?
We should be telling them to listen at safe levels, absolutely. And if there's a lot of noise canceling headphones and items out there that have helped in terms of hearing conservation, but they can still be misused if you don't know what a safe level of hearing levels are. It's not so much how loud we listen to things, it's how long we listen to those levels at that, loud levels at that time frame. So it's understanding the effects. I also think of hearing loss, especially amongst musicians, because I have many friends who are musicians. I work with a lot of musicians, a lot of custom musician products. Oftentimes I see hearing loss earlier onset from a misspent youth. Something they didn't know when they were younger, and consistently doing normal things in their routine environment actually contributed to maybe an earlier onset of hearing loss as they started to get older. So when you talk about that generation, we're all at risk for hearing loss. And whether we're firstborn to whether we're elderly, we have an all at risk for this to happen.
Right, and of course they're invincible. So it's our job to maybe impose those restrictions on the length of time they're listening to the loud music. So what's the difference then, Lisa, between an audiologist and a hearing aid specialist? We see a lot of these stores where you can go and get a test and get fitted for a hearing aid. That's not what you do.
No, and I'm a doctor of audiology, so I actually have a doctoral degree in my field. Doctoral degree is now the entry-level requirement, where a hearing instrument specialist is someone who has to have a high school diploma and take a day or two course and pass an exam, and they're licensed in the state of Illinois to become a hearing instrument dispenser. So it's a lot different training background. I went on to my doctoral program to understand a lot about the hearing and the balance system, the science behind it. There's a lot more than just the instrument themselves, and that's kind of very important to understand. There are professionals with different credentials out there. When you work with an audiologist, they're minimally going to be having a master's degree in the field. where a hearing instrument specialist does not have that type of a training.
So let's start with the hearing aid, and I know you're going to tell our viewers that there's more than just a hearing aid. There's retraining, there's exercises, but let's start with the hearing aid. We're often a little reluctant. We think that we associate it with the cranky, grumpy old men. Tell us how we can think differently about a hearing aid and the benefit of it, and why we should go and get fitted. And is that the first step in rehabilitation?
The first step in rehabilitation is first figuring out what we have to work with. What do we have going on with that individual? And then once we find a diagnosis, we can recommend different products where a hearing instrument or hearing aid can be usually very beneficial for that treatment. It's not the only treatment though, because our ears, as I mentioned earlier, simply funnel sound. They don't make sense of what we hear. It's our brain.
Yes.
So whether it be a hearing instrument or assistive listening device or a special type of over-the-counter product, something that we can look at improving that individual's communication with the people around them that they want to communicate. So hearing aids tend to be the best option, but it's not the hearing aid alone that's going to solve the problem.
So after the hearing aid, so if there is a hearing instrument that can make a difference and we get that fitted, what's the next step? Are there some further things the person with the hearing loss can do, and what can we as a family do? How can we communicate better?
Okay, mainly thing is if you are fit with a hearing instrument, working with a hearing instrument, learn to just talk naturally. Learn to talk at your normal level, and the person using the device has to be encouraged to retrain their brain to hear things again. Okay, it's kind of like going back to kindergarten 101 and you're learning to listen to sounds over again. So just like we take for granted paper shuffling, just flipping the paper, we hear those sounds. Someone fit with a hearing instrument for the first time has to retrain their brain to hear the simplest sounds. Paper rustling, water running, driving home in a car, or driving with a family member, going to a restaurant for the first time. So doing simple tasks like talking to yourself out loud, hearing how you change, hearing a familiar family member's voice a few times in a nice, comfortable, quiet environment to get a feel for how they can sound clearer and better, just starts to retrain that process.
Right. What I noticed, Lisa, with my 90-year-old father was he didn't get fitted until it was probably very, very late before he would even accept the hearing loss.
Right.
And then we found that he was a little intolerant of the conversation again. Either he'd gotten very used to the monologue, which he'd been comfortable with all his life, or it was he wasn't hearing, so he was just talking as part of the conversation. But it seems that there's almost needs to be some retraining to be part of a conversation, the give and take, rather than you speaking and not really hearing what other people are saying. Is that a common condition?
Common, yeah. And usually later onset hearing loss is a little harder to rehabilitate someone. I'm kind of like the tour guide through that journey as we figure out, okay, how long has this individual's brain been deprived of this information? Because a lot of the times when we see that onset increase in time where they don't get fit with anything or they do nothing about it, we have to kind of start over. We're going back to the very first day of kindergarten 101 in sound rehabilitation. So it can become challenging. Some people adjust very well in a few weeks. Some people take months to really adjust to hearing things clearer and better and differently.
And might there be some seniors who are not going back that maybe are not prepared to retrain?
There are, and in those cases we work out individual plans or look at other options to kind of build them up to that point, and we may be eventually able to get them to that level. But some people truly do take longer than others. So having family support behind someone with a hearing loss is very, very crucial.
And Lisa, an audiologist would also help with that rehabilitation beyond the instrument. I really understand that now. So you would almost provide the therapy after the fitting so that our hearing loss family member can fully function in conversation, in restaurants, in noise, in all the circumstances where we talk, where we converse.
It's very important, and that follow-up care is truly, truly provided, at least by my company, by my services that I bring. It's so important to the success of an individual who has a hearing loss. And many times I go into families' homes, or family members call me and they say, we've got 5 pairs of hearing aids and they're just sitting in a drawer and nothing seems to be making a difference for them. I'm not first to go try something new. I look at what they've had and what they've tried and what's not been successful with that, so I can learn a lot about what is going on with this individual's hearing impairment or hearing loss or communicative concerns, or why they rejected the instruments. So I look at the whole picture, and then from there kind of create a plan that we can try to help the individual, because a lot of times, sometimes the individuals don't want help, but their family member wants to get them that help. So we kind of find a way to make a peace treaty between the two. And in most cases, it turns out to be very successful.
And I can really see how the therapeutic approach makes a difference, and that may have been what was missing with those 5 previous fittings.
Exactly.
So let's walk through the process. So some of our viewers, and I bet you are out there, I know some of you either recognize this in yourself or in a family member or for the elder that you care for. So they suspect the hearing loss. Just talk us through the process, the first step, the follow-up step.
The follow-up step is first to recommend you have a professional come and see the individual, okay? And you want to get that individual to be open and willing to accept that first step of meeting an audiologist, okay? And we do things gradually, but then get an idea of their communication. When I first meet an individual, I'm not so concerned about getting the hearing test information right away. I want to know a little bit about them, where they noticed their difficulties communicating, and where the family has noticed the difficulties communicating. Because if I can't figure that out first, the hearing test isn't going to help me, okay? So that's a very important first step to getting the follow-up care that you need. And then from there, I get an idea of their hearing sensitivity, and we can build upon that. So sometimes I don't even do the hearing exam the first visit. I'm just learning about what I need to make improvements on.
And what can all of us do as we go through life? One of the things Lisa said that I was most impressed at the conference was, if we have a 12-year-old in our family that we know is not hearing correctly, we're saying, oh, they absolutely need a hearing aid. Whereas if it's our 70 or 80-year-old, we're saying, maybe they need, perhaps they should have a hearing test. Of course, they should have the same help to have as normal a hearing as possible. But maybe there's some acceptance of the hearing loss. But now that we've been educated as to the deficit it causes and the number of things that it can affect, we all need to realize that at any age, at any stage, we do what we can to keep and preserve our hearing, and if there is some loss, to try to get it rehabilitated. So I think that just terrific information. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, Lisa. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
Basically, the communicating with someone with a hearing impairment or hearing loss, it's very important to make sure you never shout at them. You never raise your voice when you're talking to someone who has a hearing loss, because actually it can make things more distorted. I see that happen so commonly, where the frustration comes out, all the other pieces come out, but you always want to make sure you talk at a normal, natural volume with someone who does have a hearing loss. It's very important. And don't get frustrated if they say what or ask you to repeat. Instead of just repeating it, rephrase it for them. Give their brain a different way to process the message you were trying to get across to them, whether it be a question, whether it be a statement, whatever you're trying to understand from them. Very, very important to ask them to rephrase, or have you rephrase what you're trying to say to that individual. It's very,
That's
very important.
fabulous, beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you so much,
You're welcome.
Lisa.
You're welcome.
That was terrific information. Viewers, if you need some help, if you want to contact Lisa, her information will be on the screen. If you have any questions for me, suggestions for a new show, something you'd like to see, a topic you'd like us to cover, you can always reach me at carlinwalshlaw.com or at the number on the screen. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time on Where the Road Rises.